just to relieve the stress. You know what I mean? It's a stress reliever.
And here we have...
That's Space Force.
That's the Space Force, yeah.
That's the beginning of Space Force.
Did you know comedy is actually Trump's kryptonite? When Jimmy Kimmel and Jim Carrey teamed up to roast the former president, they didn't just go after his politics. They went straight for his marriage, and boy did it hit a nerve. Trump absolutely lost it after their segment went viral. While he's used to shrugging off political attacks, something about Kimmel's pizza menu analogy and Carrey's brutal take on his relationship with Melania sent him into full meltdown mode. Why did this particular comedy bit get under his skin so badly?
You try and you try and you give it all. Give it all to her.
Quick favor before we move on. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 92% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great, thank you so much for your support. Now back to the video. Have you ever seen Trump's face when someone makes fun of him? It's like watching a tomato with a bad haircut slowly explode.
You know, these really negative forces like the Steve Bannons of the world are convincing us that we're separatists. You can make a bad decision about a candidate. It's not who you are. It doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you're different. It doesn't mean, you know, the trouble with what's happening right now is these...
While the orange man can brush off serious political attacks all day long, jokes make him lose his mind faster than McDonald's can fry a burger. When politicians attack Trump with facts and figures, he just shrugs and says, "Fake news," or "Nobody knows more about whatever than me." Problem solved. But comedy? That's his true weakness. It's like Superman and kryptonite, except instead of a hero weakened by a strange rock, it's a 77-year-old man with a Twitter finger twitch who can't handle being laughed at. What made the Kimmel and Carrey tag team so effective was how they combined their comedy styles. Kimmel brought his dry, deadpan delivery, while Carrey added his wild physical comedy and facial expressions. When Carrey started doing his Trump impression, scrunching up his face and waving his hands around like an angry traffic conductor, viewers weren't just hearing criticism, they were seeing Trump's ridiculousness brought to life. This comedy multiplier effect is what makes Trump's blood pressure shoot through the roof. One comedian? He can handle that. But when they start piling on with different styles of humor, his defensive systems overload like an old computer trying to run the latest video game. The biggest problem for Trump is he has absolutely zero ability to laugh at himself. Every other president in modern history has shown up at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and taken some jokes. Even Nixon managed to smile through jokes about Watergate. But Trump? He skipped the dinner entirely during his presidency. The man would rather eat a salad than admit a joke about him is funny. Remember when Trump got super angry at Alec Baldwin's SNL impression? He even suggested the show should be investigated. Investigated. For comedy. When politicians try to fight comedians, they always lose. It's like bringing a calculator to a comedy club, completely missing the point and looking stupid while doing it. There's something special about how comedy affects people like Trump. Dictators and wannabe strongmen hate being laughed at more than they hate political opposition. A serious opponent? That makes them look important. Getting laughed at? That makes them look weak. And nothing scares a bully more than looking weak. A professor who studies authoritarianism once said, "Dictators fear the sound of laughter more than the sound of gunfire." When people laugh at you, they're not afraid of you. And Trump's whole deal is making people either love him or fear him. Laughter ruins both. The marriage jokes hit him extra hard because they attack the image he's tried to build for decades. Trump has always sold himself as this super successful, super attractive guy who gets all the ladies. Remember those weird calls he used to make to magazines pretending to be his own PR guy, talking about all the models who wanted to date him? Grumpy Trumpy has been obsessed with this image forever. So when Kimmel and Carrey started joking about how Melania seems to hate being around him, with Carrey calling the Trump marriage capitalism without conscience, it cut deeper than any political attack. It's one thing to say his policies are bad. It's another to suggest his own wife can't stand him. That's why he responded with such rage. The comedy exposed the giant gap between Trump's tough guy image and his paper-thin skin. The guy who claims he's the toughest, strongest leader completely falls apart when someone makes a joke about his wife slapping his hand away for the 100th time. Trump tries to sell himself as this unshakable force who tells it like it is. But one joke about Melania looking miserable, and suddenly he's firing off angry posts at 3 a.m. like a teenager who just got dumped before prom. The contrast between his strongman act and his actual fragility is what comedy reveals so perfectly. But here's the thing. It wasn't just any comedy that got to Trump this time. Kimmel and Carrey didn't just make random jokes about his hair or his spray tan. They used a specific strategy that Trump had no defense against. They weren't just firing jokes at random. They were using humor like a surgeon uses a scalpel, cutting right to the parts of Trump's ego that hurt the most. What was this strategy? How did they manage to get under his skin so effectively when so many others have failed? Well, it turns out they were doing something way more clever than just telling jokes. They were using comedy as a Trojan horse to deliver some brutal truths about the former president. What if Kimmel and Carrey weren't just telling jokes about Trump, but using comedy as a sneaky package to deliver some hard truths? Think of it like hiding broccoli in a kid's mac and cheese, except in this case, the broccoli is criticism and the mac and cheese is jokes about Donnie Diaper's angry face. The two comedians didn't just randomly throw insults at the orange turd. They carefully built their comedy segment to switch between funny stuff and serious points. 1 minute you're laughing at Carrey's wild Trump face, and the next minute you're thinking, wow, that's actually a really good point about how messed up things are. Before you know it, you've swallowed a whole serving of political criticism while thinking you were just enjoying some laughs. Kimmel's pizza menu analogy was pure genius. He made Trump's crazy leadership style easy for everyone to understand. Instead of talking about governmental dysfunction and policy inconsistencies, boring stuff that makes most people's eyes glaze over, he compared Trump's White House to a pizza place that can't decide what it's selling. 1 minute they're telling federal workers they might lose their jobs. The next minute they're saying something completely different. As Kimmel put it, it was like a choose-your-own-disaster adventure, with options like fired supreme with extra chaos or conflicting statement stuffed crust. Everyone understands pizza, and everyone understands when a restaurant is a total mess. Suddenly, all Trump's confusing, flip-flopping leadership made sense in a way that even a middle schooler could get. The pizza comparison was like a light bulb moment for viewers. Complex government problems became simple. Trump saying one thing on Monday and the complete opposite on Tuesday wasn't just politician talk anymore. It was clearly just bad leadership. The audience didn't need a political science degree to see how ridiculous the situation was. But the real sneaky part was when Kimmel showed a timeline of Trump's contradictory statements. He didn't just tell the audience that Trump contradicts himself, he showed them, letting people connect the dots themselves. There's nothing more powerful than that, wait, did he really say both those things? Moment when your brain figures out someone is full of crap. By letting the audience discover Trump's inconsistencies on their own, Kimmel turned joke watchers into critical thinkers. This approach is way more effective than just saying Trump is a liar or Trump is bad. When people reach their own conclusions based on evidence, those conclusions stick much harder than when someone just tells them what to think. The comedy was like the sugar that helped the medicine go down. Then came the real twist. Jim Carrey, known for his goofy faces and wild physical comedy, suddenly dropped the funny act. In the middle of all the laughs, he got serious and talked directly to viewers about how Trump has made division, dishonesty, and hatred normal in America. The shift was unexpected, like when your funny friend suddenly tells you something real and deep. This change in tone gave the segment an emotional punch that pure comedy couldn't deliver. It's like when you're watching a comedy movie and suddenly there's a scene that makes you feel something. That scene often sticks with you more than all the jokes. By mixing the funny with the serious, Carrey made sure his message wouldn't be forgotten as soon as the next TikTok video started playing. The whole Trojan horse strategy worked because the audience absorbed real criticism of Trump, while thinking they were just being entertained. People tend to put up mental walls when they think they're being lectured or taught something. But jokes? Those slip right past our defenses. Before you know it, you're thinking about serious political issues and you didn't even realize you were learning. It's no surprise that Trump got so mad about this comedy routine. Kimmel and Carrey weren't just making fat jokes or spray tan jokes. They were using comedy to expose fundamental truths about his character and leadership that regular political commentary often fails to communicate effectively. They tricked people into thinking critically about the former president, and nothing scares Trump more than people actually thinking. But as hard-hitting as the pizza menu was, it wasn't even the knockout punch. The real killer blow came when the comedians turned their attention to something even more personal to Trump, something that hit him right in his fragile ego. They went after the one thing Trump can't stand having mocked, his marriage to Melania. You know what really gets under Trump's skin? Not the investigations, not the politicians calling him names, not even the media coverage of his legal troubles. Nope, it's jokes about his marriage. When Kimmel and Carrey started mocking his relationship with Melania, Trump completely lost it. Why? Because the marriage jokes hit way closer to home than politics ever could. The comedians weren't just throwing random punches. They carefully aimed at the soft spot in Trump's armor, his supposedly perfect marriage to Melania. They focused on how uncomfortable she looks around him, which is something people have been noticing for years. Remember all those videos of Melania slapping Trump's hand away? Or her smile dropping the second she thinks cameras aren't on her? Kimmel and Carrey sure did, and they used it all. Carrey delivered the knockout punch when he called the Trump marriage capitalism without conscience. Ouch. He basically said their whole relationship is just a business deal where Melania puts up with the orange nightmare in exchange for money and designer clothes. No love, no connection, just a contract that makes both sides rich. For a guy who brags about being irresistible to women, that's gotta hurt. The comedians had plenty of material to work with. They highlighted how Melania stands like a robot next to Trump at events, how she seems to calculate the minimum amount of physical contact required for appearances, and most damaging of all, those moments when she physically recoils from his touch like he's covered in something sticky and gross, which, let's be honest, he probably is. What makes this so powerful is how it taps into what everyone's already thinking. The public has been fascinated by Melania's apparent dislike for her husband for years. There are whole compilations online of Melania hates Donald moments. Every time she dodges a kiss or wipes her hand after touching him, it becomes internet gold. The comedians just had to point to what we all see with our own eyes. Marriage mockery works so well against Trump because it exposes the embarrassing truth that his own wife seems to hate being around him. Think about it. If the person who chose to marry you can barely stand your presence, what does that say about you? If your wife looks like she's mentally calculating how many more years of this she has to endure, are you really the amazing guy you claim to be? For Donnie Diapers, these questions hit right in the ego. The marriage jokes connect perfectly to broader criticisms of Trump's character. If he can't maintain a real relationship with his own wife, how can he connect with regular Americans? If his own marriage is just a business transaction, isn't that how he sees everything? It suggests his whole approach to relationships is about what he can get, not about human connection. What really destroys Trump's self-image is how these jokes undermine his whole irresistible to women act. This is a guy who used to call magazines pretending to be someone else just to brag about all the models who wanted to date him. He spent decades trying to convince everyone he's a ladies' man. Now he's stuck with a wife who seems to need an internal pep talk just to hold his hand in public. That's not exactly the image of a desirable man that Trump has tried so hard to project. Every time Melania pulls her hand away or gives him that icy stare, it's not just rejecting him as a husband, it's rejecting his entire carefully built persona. It says that even with all his money and power, he still can't buy genuine affection from the woman who's supposed to love him. For someone as insecure as Trump, that cuts deeper than any political criticism ever could. These marriage jokes hit Trump's core insecurities in a way political attacks never managed to. When politicians call him corrupt or incompetent, he just calls them losers and moves on. But suggest his wife can't stand him, that she's just sticking around for the money, that his marriage is a sham. Now you've got Grumpy Trumpy firing off angry social media posts at 3 a.m. And that's exactly what happened after Kimmel and Carrey's segment. Trump didn't just ignore it like he does with serious political criticism. He completely melted down, proving the comedians were right all along. His explosive reaction showed everyone that beneath all the bluster and bravado is just a deeply insecure man who can't handle people laughing at his marriage. The fact that Trump couldn't laugh it off or ignore it tells us something important. They found his true weakness. When Trump saw Kimmel and Carrey's comedy takedown, he reacted exactly how they predicted. The orange turd immediately started hurling personal attacks at Kimmel, trying to make him look desperate. Classic Trump move. This reaction proved their whole point. Behind that tough guy act is just an insecure old man who can't handle being laughed at. The comedians found the perfect formula to get under his skin, combining their styles, sneaking in truth bombs disguised as jokes, and hitting his marriage insecurities. Next time you see a politician lose their mind over comedy, remember they're not mad about the jokes. They're mad about the truths those jokes reveal.